Hello, today is Maundy Thursday and we are going to look and give some focus to the events in the upper room, particularly the supper that took place there. In John 13, we read the accounts and the events surrounding the occasion of the Last Supper, the Passover meal, a meal that was steeped in history and significance, going way back to the end of the 10th plague and the exodus of the people of Israel from Egypt. This was the meal that was to be the last that Jesus shared on earth with his disciples. He knew the time was coming for him to return to heaven. Judas had in his heart already to betray him and had gained 30 pieces of silver, we are told by Matthew, to do so. So this was highly significant for Jesus, and he sent ahead his disciples to get things prepared for this special supper together. Since the focus of Maundy Thursday is on the upper room and this Last Supper, the celebration of Holy Communion or the Eucharist is one of the most ancient Christian practices that is commemorated on this day. However, the sacrament is celebrated in some churches as part of an evening meal in a less formal setting, reminiscent of the setting of the original Last Supper. However Maundy Thursday is observed, sharing is an integral part. Communion together in one form or another. Jesus had all his disciples together to share this meal, but as the meal was being served, one thing was overlooked. Walking in sandals on the roads of Israel in the first century made it important that feet should be washed before a communal meal, as reclining at low tables meant that feet were easily seen. Jesus simply got up and quietly moved among the disciples, knelt before them and washed the dust and sand from their feet. This was an act of humility and servanthood. When Jesus came to earth, he came not as a king and conqueror, but as the suffering servant of Isaiah 53. As he revealed in Matthew 20 and verse 28, he came not to be served, but to serve. Jesus washing the disciples' feet was not merely a symbolic act. It serves to teach us about the way of life of a follower of Jesus. John 13 verse 14 says, "If I, then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought also to wash one another's feet." It was not a wishy-washy weakness to kneel before them, but a meekness with strength and dignity. It was an example of service and love to one another, and done in a spirit of humility, for and with love. The word Maundy comes to us as an Anglo-French word derived from the Latin word mandatum, which means commandment. It refers to later in the chapter 13, when Jesus in the upper room during the Last Supper said to his disciples, "A new commandment I give to you. Love one another as I have loved you. By this everyone will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. Love one another as I have loved you." Graham Kendrick penned the words, "So let us learn how to serve, and in our lives enthrone him, each other's needs to prefer, for it is Christ we are serving. This is our God, the servant King. He calls us now to follow him, to bring our lives as a daily offering of worship to our servant King." Here's something to consider. What were the things that got in the way of the disciples noticing what needed to be done? What are the things that get in your way of following the example of Jesus in your life? Consider ways in which you can show an act of love, kindness and compassion to another each day. A final prayer. Lord, you taught that through our actions people will see we are your disciples. Challenge us each day to show our love for one another in humility, in meekness, in compassion and love. Amen.